Right. Good morning, everybody. This is Nicole from the State Library, and I'm here with Debbie Hensler from Autographics, who's going to be doing our training today about our new SRCS updates. Can you guys hear us okay? The people in the room say they can hear us just fine, and it looks like all of you can as well. So that's good. All right, well, like I said, I'm here with Debbie from Autographics, and she's got most of the content for today's presentation about the updates that are gonna be coming to our SRCS service. So I'm gonna let her go ahead and get started, and then I'll be back later for questions and that. So if you have questions as we go along, type them into the chat box, and I'll be monitoring that. And we'll just go ahead and get started.
Great, thanks Nicole. Yeah, so I'm Debbie Hensler, and I am one of the product managers for Share It with Autographics. And I work with our user group, I do training, I work with documentation and all kinds of other things, duties as assigned. Everybody's heard that phrase before, right? So we do a bit of everything. And what we're going to talk about today is our new version that actually is coming out now. We're calling it version 6 for Share It. And don't worry, we're not going to sit here and go through slides all morning. We're going to go into a live demo of the system, but I did want to go into a few things on slides. So we'll do that. So why are we moving to a new version? Well, basically because it's time. We haven't come out with a new version since version 5, which was back in around 2015, 2016. And this new platform brings a lot of improvements and potentials. Most of the improvements have been made on the back end. Things like a brand new search engine. It's totally new. A lot of changes with how indexing is done. A whole new database structure. A big thing to understand, though, is that your basic workflows when it comes to interlibrary loan are not changing. Screens will look a bit different. There are some changes, but processing interlibrary loans, the request manager, all of that is staying the same. The release schedule itself, we're currently in final QA, doing some what we call tweaking and polishing. We're going through a bunch of, we've been doing internal testing, we're doing more testing and load testing, working on getting the documentation updated. The first beta customers will be coming up in a couple of weeks. And then SRCS will be migrating, we're looking at the weekend of May 31st. And it is a weekend, the system will be done over the weekend from about Friday evening until Monday morning. Friday evening, Eastern time, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. The URL structure is going to change. Don't worry, you don't have to worry about writing all this down. I just put it up there so that people would see it. It's going to be a simpler, shorter URL. Your current URLs will redirect for 6 months, so that's, I mean, you don't have to worry about this at the moment, but just understand that it will be simpler. It'll be easier to email a URL and not have to do that reset force thing to get it to stick. So that's one improvement. Some of the back-end technical improvements, the biggest one is on security. And currently, just about everything that we're doing in Share It is secured, but moving forward, every single thing is encrypted. And that means whether it is at rest on the servers, whenever a transaction is happening over the internet, everything is secured. There's also been some improvements to sessions, and a session is whenever you're logging into the system. So you'll be able to log into multiple sessions in the same browser in different tabs. Right now you can't do that. If you try to log in, you're just in the same session. Now you'll be able to log into different sessions because you may be at the CERC desk, let's say working in your request manager, and a patron comes up and wants to have you look something up for them. You don't have to stop what you're doing. You can just open a new tab. You have to log in again, but you can keep the work you're doing open a new tab, do whatever you need to do to help that patron, and then go back to your work without having to find what you were doing again. So I mentioned that it's an entirely new search engine. It's much faster. It incorporates rooting and stemming into results. So my example here is if you do a search for the word house, your results will include things like houses, housing, household. It'll be a broader search. We'll see the multiple level type ahead suggestions. So now whenever you enter in a search term in the basic search box and you get some type ahead suggestions, you just get a list of them. Going forward, they'll be broken out by index. So it'll show you author, subject, title, whatever. We'll see that. Another thing is that you're able to search as a guest, meaning you haven't logged in yet. And if you do that now, and then you think, oh, I should have logged in, you have to repeat your search. With V6, you won't have to repeat your search. It'll retain that for you and your results. So that's nice. And like I mentioned, indexing has been greatly improved. There's more analysis of the marked fields. So the indexing is more targeted, and it's easier for us at Autographics, for our customer service staff, to add new indexes or facets if they are needed. We'll take a look at search results. There have been some changes here. You're able to switch between the clustered and merged views on the screen. And I'll look at that and explain it again, but basically clustered means we're clustering results together based upon the author and the title only, and so it brings multiple formats together. Merged, we're looking at author, title, publisher, and date, and so that tends to break formats out because usually if a book is done in large print, it's done by a different publisher or probably in a different year even. So it breaks out those formats. And now you'll be able to switch between those two views directly on the screen. There are some new icons. We'll see those for requesting the item and saving them to the list. I'm not going to read all the slides to you. I'm just looking for some things to point out here. Oh, results navigation. Right now, if you're scrolling through pages of results trying to look for something and you find a record and you click on it to open the full record and realize that's not what you want, right now when you close that full record, it throws you back to page 1, which isn't really useful if you were on page 7. In V6, it's going to return you back to page 7. So you can start right back where you were and not from the beginning again. There is an option to highlight the search term in the results, and we'll take a look at that. And then whenever we look at the UX admin settings, we'll see how that is set. And there's also more support now for non-English language characters so that they display properly. There's been a lot of work done for facets. There's more facets now for filtering, and adding additional facets, like I said, can be added more efficiently. How you use the facets, these are the options that are provided on the left side of the screen after you do your search. Right now, you can only use one facet. You select that. You'll say you want to look for large print. And then you decide, well, I also want to know if it's available as an audiobook. Well, then you select audiobook and you've lost the large print results. Now you'll be able to look at both of those on the screen. So you can still use and between facets. So if you want to look for a particular author and a particular format, you can do that. You can also use multiple selections within a facet, and then it uses or. So if you're looking at the formats, you can say, I want to look at a book or a large print book, and you'll get both of those results back. And there is a new facet we can see, take a look at that too, for awards. And just let me know if people pop in with questions or anything in the chat.
So far, so good. Everyone just says hi.
Okay, great. Hi back. Another change that's been made, and this is, I've given this a great term called and or searching. Right now, if you do a multi-word search, currently, and this is pretty standard, if you're using the basic search and you put 2 words in, the system automatically inserts and between those 2 words. So if you put in black, white, it looks for black and white. If it doesn't find any results, you're stuck with no results. In V6, what we do is if there's no results, we'll change that and to an or. So now we'll search for black or white. And so it may bring back some results that will help you. It'll at least supply some alternatives by expanding your search. If there are absolutely no results at all, we will still provide some did you mean options. And there are some ways to customize text if there are 0 results. If you want to send people to a help page or a chat with the librarian page or something, there is a way to do that. When it comes to the full record display, that really hasn't changed, except for the display looks a bit different because the fonts have changed and things. The biggest change you'll see is that the staff functions have moved from the right side of the bib record to the left side of the bib record. And that was done, you'll see a lot of things will be coming out from the left side of the screen moving forward. And that's because this version is much more mobile friendly, much easier to use on tablets and smartphones. And whenever you're using those devices, they tend to look at the left side of the screen rather than the right. So the important stuff has been moved over to the left. When it comes to placing requests, the only change here is that the request form itself has been updated, so it does have a new look to it. There is still the ability for staff to switch between returnable and non-returnable request types, just like you have now. It just looks a bit different. If you place a multi-copy request, right now, if you place a multi-copy request, the number of request fields is filled in with a default of 1. So if you click multi-copy request and you fill everything out, but you forget to change that, guess what? You haven't done a multi-copy request, right? So now we have changed that so that that field is blank by default, and it's also required. So if you forget to put something in, you can't place the request, you'll get a little pop-up saying, hey, we need a number here. So that should help for people like me who forget to sometimes fill in all the fields. Advanced search, we will look at this too. There have been some changes here. When it comes to record counts, they are immediately visible. And I put Union Database in parentheses on the slide here. And that's because when we're doing an advanced search and getting these record counts, we're only getting record counts for what's in the Union catalog. And that's because those are the only records that we have immediate access to. Libraries that are set up as Z targets or virtual targets for remote searching, we don't know until we go out and search them what's there, all right? But at least in the advanced search, it gives you an idea of what kinds of things might be available. And you're also able to, now using advanced search, perform a search based on 1 or more filters without having to enter a search term. Every now and then people would say to me, I just want to get a list of my DVDs or something, and how do I do that? If I put in DVD, it wants a search term. And I would say, well, you have to put in DVD as a term, and that will hopefully be in the records. Well, now you can do that without entering a search term at all. Staff dashboard, we'll take a look at this. There have been some changes on the staff dashboard. The biggest thing I think people will like is that there's now a left panel navigation menu that allows you to really easily move between pages in the staff dashboard. There have been some changes to the configuration menu. We'll look at that. And the quick menu, I should have changed this slide. It's no longer called a quick menu. It's actually now called quick links. And there have been some changes here. And it's much easier to edit and add things to a quick menu or quick links. Goodness, get your terms right. Your account, your list, and the search history, they all have the same functionality, just with some display changes. So, if you looked at one of those without having been here today, you wouldn't have a heart attack and think, oh my goodness, what happened? It would just be, oh, this looks a bit different, but it works the same way. UX admin, we'll take a look at this. There are some good changes in things like search and results, how to set the defaults, how to control features like type ahead, if you want the highlighting turned on or off. When it comes to design, that's where you can change the color theme if you'd like to do that. Biggest thing in UX admin is creating pages. Right now, if you wanted to create a new page or add something to a page and you want to have what we're currently call widgets, you have to sort of create the widget and then add it to a page, and it's on two different places. Now it all happens in one interface. All right. It's and rather than widgets, they're called components. I'm not sure why that term changed, but it did. Okay, but they mean the same thing. So say you want to create the page, and then right on the page, you add whatever component you want. So it's just much easier to set up and see what you're doing. And you also will have the ability to schedule a page to go live on a particular date. So if you wanted to change colors for the holidays or something, you can do that, and you can create the page in advance and just say when you want it to go live. And there you go. And you can toggle pages on and off. And I just put a few slides in here just to show you how this looks. Like I said, we'll take a look at it. But you basically, if you're creating a new page, you select the layout that you want. And each of these little gray boxes is where a component would fit, whether it's text or an image or something. And on the left, these are the various components. That first one there, a call to action, that would be if you wanted to have a link, donate to the library now, keep IOL going in Indiana. So you could have a little call to action box, or an image or a list or various carousels you can use, or a feedback box, or just text or a web link. And then if you're doing a text block, I just put this one up here on the screen too. You can do things like increase the size and use italics and have links and a different font color, different background color. So you can get pretty fancy. One of my coworkers never likes my colors that I choose, which is sort of sad. And then this page is just a couple of little snippets from the system to show you how you can, when you create a new page, you give it a page label, a name. I use the highly imaginative term test page. And then you set whether you want it to be active now or active on a date, who it's visible to. And remember, guests would be people who aren't logged in, patrons are logged in, and staff are logged in. So you can have separate staff pages, separate patron pages very easily. And whether you want that to be active now, if you click active on a date, then you just enter in the date that you wanted to go live. And I think that was it for the slides. Are there any questions or anything before we go on? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and take a quick sip of something to drink here. So this is version 6, and this is just a generic page that we have. In the upper left, we put the Share It logo up there. You can have a logo there. It'll probably just default to your library's name. This next little icon is a language selector. So if you wanted to change the translate what's on the page, that can be done. The indexes, now I'm not logged in, so we have very few indexes here to look at. But again, they can be set for patrons or, guests or staff, whichever one you want, different indexes are available. The resources, you can see where this comes out from the left now, which it didn't previously do. These are not your resources. This is our demo site that we're looking at. So we just have various things thrown in here, but you'll see the same resources that you do now for SRCS. We'll take a look in a minute at the advanced search in just a little bit. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and actually I'm going to unclick some of these just so we don't go on and search a whole lot of catalogs. And So you can see as I start typing, it starts to pull up the type ahead suggestions, but what's different now is that it does it by index. So we can see as soon as I start typing in Harry P.O., it gives me titles for Harry Potter, Harry Truman's China Policy, because Harry and P.O. are in the title, some authors, and subjects that fit. So I can select one of these if I want, or I can just, as now, I can keep typing and hit enter or click the magnifying glass to do my search. Now the display is a bit different, and so let me show you what's going on here first. If you notice quickly, I should have pointed that out first. In the upper right, it said how many search results were remaining. Did you get a chance to see that? Let me go ahead and I'm going to run that search again. So take a look, see right in the upper right, it says 2 search resources remaining, 1 search resource remaining. So I had selected the Unicatalog and 2 libraries that were set up as Z targets. So what it did is it was telling me it was still searching those resources. What it did not do while it was searching them was have the screen flicker as it kept refreshing. Yay, no more flickering screen. What we're doing is as soon as we get results back to paint the first screen, we paint it and stop. So you're not annoyed by that flickering anymore. But we keep searching in the background. If I had been searching, let's say 100 targets out there, but when it came back, I realized, oh, this is the one I want. I don't have to wait for it to finish. There's no stop button because it doesn't matter. I don't have to wait. I can just click on whatever I want and go to that. If I see what I want on this screen, I'm good. I don't have to do anything else. If I don't, I have an option up here if it found additional results, and it may not have. That may have been it, but it found more. I can either add to my results or I can ignore. All right. If I add to results, it tells me additional results are now included. You return to the first page. So if I had been, in this case, it would return me to the first page if I had been 5 pages back, and that's because it has to refresh the entire thing. So it did put, would put me back to the first page. So that's nice. No more flickering screens, and now I have results from 3 sources. So some of the other changes on this screen. Well, some things have changed and some have stayed the same. The facets are still on the left. It still shows me how many results there are in the upper right. I can still modify my search. I'm now seeing some related subjects, so I can search those. These are links I can click on if I want. The results themselves, I'm looking at the gallery view here, and it's sorted by relevance. And I apparently do not have the ability turned on for guests to look at it by clustered or merged, and that's an option that can be turned on or off. Somebody went in here and did something yesterday after I looked at it yesterday morning, but that's okay. We'll see when we log in. But so what I'm seeing is the gallery view, and these are clustered, and I can tell because I have multiple formats listed for some of these titles. So remember, clustering, all it's doing is looking at the title and the author. So it's pulling together audiobooks, music CDs, recordings, large print. What it will not tend to do is to cluster a DVD at the same time. And that's because, why? DVDs don't have an author. So it cannot match on a field that does not exist. You're always like, why won't the DVD cluster? Well, that's why, unfortunately. So we keep trying to figure out how to make that work. But everything is in a nice little box. You can see how many there are. There are no, there's no ability here hovering over the title to do things like add to the list or anything. Whenever we log in, we'll see the icons that have changed. Right now I'm a guest. I don't have the ability to request or do anything. All right. But if I wanted to look at a full record, all that I need to do is to click on the title or on the link to the format itself. Either one is going to take me to the full record. So as we can see, on the left is now where the information about, if I were logged in, we'll see all of my staff functions or patron functions on the left. Right now, I can just email or print or get a permanent link. But I have my details just like I do now, subjects, authors, etc., or still links. If I want to go to any of those, I have where to find it and more about this title. On the left are my various facets. And let's take a look here. I'm going to go to the format, and there are 7 audiobook CDs. If I say that's what I want to look at, I can select those. It shows me which facets I've selected right above the results. If I wanted to add another format, let's say I wanted to add these 2 DVDs. So now I can look at the audiobooks and the DVDs for my search. And that's something that we cannot currently do in version 5. I'm going to go ahead and log in now. And what I'm going to do is log in as a staff person. And I have to type slowly because I don't have anything saved. It's not my computer, so I'm like, do I know my passwords? Okay, so I've just logged in, and we can see it retained my search and my results, but they look different. And that's because I'm now logged in as a staff person, and we have different things turned on for staff, so we can see some different views and how things look. Obviously, you can see that highlighting is turned on for staff. So this is what it would look like if you do turn the highlighting on. And it highlights the term itself in the record. And we can see this particular one, it has the title, but there's nothing highlighted. But we know that Harry Potter is somewhere in this record, and so that's why that result is on the screen. The other thing, if I look on the left now, here I can see all of my staff functions. One thing that's missing is that header of staff functions, and we realize we don't really need that. We're logged in as a staff person. These are your functions, all right? So you can still request the item, add it to your list. We'll look at doing a multi-copy in just a minute. You go back again and show you a couple of other things. So now I have a couple of icons down here that I didn't see before, and I'm not seeing them on the clusters, and that's because I cannot, this little push finger is to request this item, and the one that looks like a list is to save it to your list. I only have those options because I know in this case this is a book. If I want to request it, I want to request this book. These other cases where I have different formats clustered, I have to select the format that I want before I can do a request or add it to my list. The system needs to know what it is I want to request or not. Let me go over to the left here and see. I'm going to have to turn a... Okay. So in the upper right, I still have my options to sort. And here's that group by function that I mentioned before. This is where you can change your views from clustered or merged directly on the screen. And it tells you what they mean. So no grouping means nothing's grouped together. If I were to select that, it's going to break out all of the results so that each and every item is listed separately. Most people, except for catalogers, tend to not use that one. Cluster is what we were looking at, and so that's where it groups things together by just title and author. And if I switch it to merge, now what it's going to do is break things out, like I said, mostly into individual formats. Every now and then you will find some books or ebooks that were published, like here's the audiobooks, and things that apparently were all done by Listening Library the same year. So they do cluster together, but it does tend to break things out by format in most cases. And we're looking at the gallery view. I can switch this to the list view if I want, and This gives me the same options to request or add something to my list, but it just breaks them out into a list rather than that gallery. The same information is provided. One thing that's not available anymore is what was called the gallery grid view. And that was the one that did things in a list but had all the cover art sort of in a little carousel across the top. What we discovered is that less than 1% of our customers actually use that. So it was discontinued due to lack of interest, I guess, is the nice way of putting it. So that's pretty much doing the searching and what the search results look like. I'm going to go ahead now and place a request, and I'll just place it on this first one that we have here, the audiobook cassette. And I can do it right from here as I can now, or I can always go into the full record if I want to in order to place a request. And what we'll see is that the screen does look a bit different than it does now. The same elements will be here that you see. They're just in a different format because creating the form itself, configuring it, has changed. But it's still going to bring in the bibliographic information, that any addition is acceptable checkbox, the need by date, borrower's note, patron last name is still required, or you can do the patron lookup. None of this has changed in how this works. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place this request. I'm not going to do a lookup. I'll just put in my my information here. And this is my email, dmh@autographics.com. And I think this is covering up, oh yes, sorry, the little function here for the system was covering up some of my information. The lower right of the screen is where the submit and cancel button or the back to top buttons are found. And you can see they stay with the screen. They stay in the lower right as I scroll up and down. So if I wanted to place this request, I can just go ahead and click submit. And it should place the request. There we go. IOL, my request has been submitted. The system will check for lenders. Please check your account later. Say OK. So I've just placed a request. So that has not changed. I'm going to click the request button again just to show you the thing I mentioned before, that just how it looks has changed. Currently in version 5, there's an ability in, depending on where it's set on your form, that you can change the request type from a returnable or to a non-returnable or the other way around. And the system selects automatically the request type based upon the format. If you're requesting a book, an audiobook, a physical item, it knows it's a returnable. If you're requesting something from a journal, it's going to make it a non-returnable because you're requesting a copy. But you always had the option to change that. People are like, why would I want to do that? Well, let's say you're placing a request for, in this case, this is a sound recording. We'll pretend it's a book. And I really don't want the whole book, but the last page was torn out. I'm just asking somebody to photocopy the last page for me. Is that legal? Okay. We're going to say it is. So in that case, I would change this to a non-returnable. I get the little copyright information. I have to click yes to keep going. And here's what, I would put in some sort of a note saying, please just photocopy, page 74 or something. The other way it could work is if I started off with a non-returnable because it was a journal, but let's say it's a special edition of Time magazine. It's one of those big fat ones that everybody, wants to read the whole thing. It's about the new royal baby, who knows? And somebody wants to borrow the entire magazine, not just an article. It's going to default to a non-returnable because it's a journal, and I would be able to switch it to a returnable and again put in a note saying, can we please borrow the entire magazine, just to make sure that they see that we want the whole thing. So just how that looks on the screen has changed is all. but it functions the exact same way. Let me go back here and switch this back to cluster. And I do want to show you the.
We did have one question come
what's
through.
That? Go ahead.
Joan asks us, the list view no longer shows which library owns an item.
Correct. Good point. Thank you for asking, because I forgot to point that out. Yeah, the list view no longer shows what library owns the item. All that it's doing is showing you the count. It looks like I hope I told them I was doing a demo today, and they're not doing something here. Okay, let me get back and do my search. Right, we're no longer showing the libraries that own it on the first page. You have to go into the full record to get the list of libraries. So, but we are showing the count. You know, there's a record, but we're not seeing the list of libraries. There's a few reasons for that. Number one is that if 100 libraries own it, the 100 libraries aren't all listed on the first page. And if it's owned by libraries in the union catalog, it would just say, you know, union catalog, so you're not seeing who owns it anyhow. You still have to go into the full record to see exactly who owns it. And the other thing is that whenever you're actually placing a request, it really doesn't matter who owns the item, because that's not what decides who gets the request when it's placed. You know, that whole functionality within the system hasn't changed. And so if we're looking at you know, placing a request, what the system's going to look at is you know, who your lender, who your preferred lenders are in your participant record. I'm not sure whether you do network lending here. I don't think so. Okay, so it'll just look at who your preferred lenders are. It'll look at who owns the libraries. If it's doing availability checking, it'll check to see if any are, you know, what's available. It'll also, in the background, look at that particular record, but also look and say, are there other records that match that for some reason did not, that the holdings did not get attached to this particular record? All right, which can happen because cataloging things, you know, if we're looking at a clustered view or a merged view, it wouldn't matter. But if there's a typo in the title somewhere or in the publisher name, and I've seen a lot of those, it's not going to match. But it might match on ISBN. So the system might be able to find the record, you know, elsewhere, you know, another holding, and it'll add that to the lender list. So no, it's not going to show you the libraries anymore. You know, for various reasons, those are just some of them.
She said they were doing it to look for libraries, like when they request DVDs, they were using it to see like which libraries would lend the DVDs, and I don't know if they were choosing specific lenders because of that or.
If libraries aren't lending DVDs, and maybe they're just not doing this, but they should either have them, depending on how they're set up, if they're using the lending policy to control what they lend and don't, they should have those not marked as, you know, that they don't lend them, or mapped as non-lendable if they're a Z target. They'll come up in the search, but it doesn't matter. You can still place the request and it'll just go to the libraries that do lend them. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. Pardon me? Okay, so the question is, Okay, so the question is, or the problem is that, I'm just repeating this so if people didn't hear it, that if that all of the DVDs show up as separate records, and so you have to go through and find the one that is owned by a library that lends DVDs. Would you make a note of that, please, Nicole?
Yes. Yep, I'm making a note of it. We have a couple more people piping up on the chat with that same question.
Okay,
So we'll
yeah, I mean, we'll just have to make a note. I mean, as of now, the libraries are not showing up, will not be showing up on your results list. You have to go into the full record to see those. So I can't change it today, but if we make a note, I can at least bring it back to the crew, okay, as a concern, all right? Because that's the first time that we've heard that. No, I do understand what you mean, okay? Just not real sure why they're all showing up as separate records. So, okay. Anything else before I move on here?
I think that was it. There's a few people typing, but we'll see.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just let me know if anything else comes up then. Let me go back and find a Goodreads page unavailable. Interesting. Okay, I just wanted to find something that had at least you know, an owner here. What I want to do is I just want to show you quickly, and normally if you're going to place a multi-copy request, in this case you are looking for a record that has multiple lenders attached to it. This is our demo site. It's really small, okay? So there's not a whole lot in here, but I'm going to go ahead and click the multi-copy form just to show you. So it's telling me how many targets have responded, how many current lenders. I can stop the process at any time, okay? So I have 7 potential lenders for this, and there's my lender list of my 7 potential lenders, and here's where it shows copies needed with the little red star, which they need to fix that. That's part of the polishing that needs to be done. But I'm going to go ahead and just say I want to do a multi-copy request and click submit, and I just wanted to show you how it'll tell you number of copies needed is required because I did not fill that out, and so now I can put in the number of copies. So that's the change that's been made, but again, the multi-copy request process itself has not changed. Let's take a look now at the advanced search screen. So again, it looks a bit different, but basically the elements haven't changed. So the advanced search screen at the top, it still has, you know, you have the ability to enter your search term, whether you want in all of these words, any of these words, this exact phrase, which index you want to search in. If you're going to do multiple lines, select and or not as an operator, and then you can do multiple lines if you want. Again, you can still select your sort order for your results once you're all done. So that part hasn't changed. Your search resources, this section of the screen looks a little bit different, but again, it really hasn't changed. In that your resources are here. If you wanted to see who your local library catalogs are, you just open up that screen. You can uncheck them all, check just a couple if you want. So you're able to select your search resources as you're doing an advanced search. And I'm not getting a number here. Let me, I do feel like they're doing something, guys. Sorry. Okay. So what I wanted to show you is in the lower right, it says search 138,237 records. So what this is telling me is that's the number of bib records I have in my union catalog. It's not telling me what's out there in all of those virtual libraries or Z targets, but I know immediately what's available in my union catalog. The section at the bottom here has also changed a bit. I keep changing that back, and they keep doing this to me. Filters, A. That's the name of our demo library. Okay. But here I would see, again, this is not what you'll see, but you can select which libraries you want to look at. If you want to look at all libraries, that's the default, or just your library, or whatever groups are set up for Indiana. The year of publication, there are some changes here. You can either select, it says select the filter below, that's sort of tiny, or enter a range. So if I wanted to look for something that was published in a particular year, I can enter in the year, or I can open this up. I can open up any of these filters, and in this case for year, they've set it up so that you can easily search decades. If you know that you want something that was published in the 50s or 60s, you can do that and select 1951 to 1960, and there are 6,097 records published in those years. In the lower right, my number now has changed to search 6,097 records. So anything that I do from now on, it's going to keep narrowing down this total search number based upon whatever I select. In the years 1951 to 1960, there are these formats available. If I uncheck that, now my formats open up into many more formats, all right? But it had narrowed them down based upon this date range that I had selected. So if I wanted to see, oh, there's 43 DVDs here. If that's what I wanted to look at, I can just select DVD 43. It says search 43 results. I can click search and get those results. And it's showing me all I'm looking at are the DVDs. The other thing that's nice, let me take a look here, is the languages. This allows me to see right off what I have in various languages. So if I wanted to see, what do I have in Polish? I can see those 4 records. A new facet, and we don't have it set up as a facet on the left after doing a search, but it is here in the advanced search, and it's easy to add as a facet for your results, is this awards filter. And so here I can easily find things that have won different awards: Caldecott, Newbery Award, Pulitzer. It'll bring those up. So those are the advanced search changes. Nothing too dramatic, except seeing those initial numbers right off the bat and being able to do a search without having entered in a search term. Just went back to the home page here. I want to point out a couple of other things. In the upper right, we have your lists, and I want to open this up and show you. So your list, the display looks a bit different. Everything looks a bit different because fonts and things have changed, but functionality again has pretty much remained the same. Big change is that cover art is now displaying in your results, which it didn't do before. And you can still, select everything in your list, or print your list, save it. You can, if you have multiple lists set up, you can move things from one list to another list, or individual titles from one list to another list. So that really, your functionality there for using lists is still there. If we look at the search history, no, I don't have anything. My search history is to not save anything. So let's go here, and I'm going to take a look at my account and go to my preferences. And here's where I can see that my number of searches to save is 0. I'm going to change that to 10. So I can still set what I want for my default opening page, my search, advanced search indexes, what I want to look for. The primary staff menu, whenever we look at the staff dashboard, just keep in mind that you can set which primary staff menu you want. And what this means is it's the one that'll be in the upper left next to your quick links. And so you set that in your account and your preferences. So I just saved my preferences, and I want to go ahead and do a search here, and we'll do another search. My favorite word, library. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is take a look at my search history, because before it was set to 0, so I couldn't see anything. So I just set it to 10, and what it's doing is it's showing me my search history. 2 of 10 are saved, and so it gives me my search term, what index I used, how many resources, which resources I used. If I want to repeat that search, I just click the search button. If I want to modify the search, I can go ahead and do that, and it opens up the advanced search screen, so I can work off of that initial search but change it a bit to do a new search. And there's also a more details button, which just tells me formats I looked at, year of publication, so anything else I was looking at in that search, it'll list that information. So that's changed in that it's now on the left of the screen rather than sort of across the top or off from the right. Any questions or comments on searching or placing requests? Like I said, placing request hasn't changed, it just looks a bit different.
The one question that we had online was about the patron email. It looked like it was required in what you were doing, and I was holding on to that question until we were getting to either a break or configuring the form. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll look at configuring the form. That's just how it's set in this system. But you set up your request form and what you want to be required. In this case, it's requiring a patron email. So.
But they could set it up to not have to.
Yes, if
right?
you don't currently do that, then no, you don't have to do that.
Great.
So yeah. Yeah, one of the beauties of this system is that it is super configurable and customizable. But it also means that when we're doing a demo, you might see things that aren't quite the way you have it set. And that's because we have to do a demo sort of generically. But that was a good question. Thanks. So what I just did now was to click on the SAP Dashboard. So we can take a look at this. A few changes here. First of all, the search has been sort of minimized and brought to the upper left, again for that smaller device use. It used to be that big box, or currently is that big box sort of right in the middle. We'll take a look at the quick links in a minute. This is that IOL admin menu that I had set as my primary staff menu, so it's always going to be the next one. The quick links will always be first, and then your primary menu will be next. There are some changes in this particular menu. The first one is that the participant record is currently called maintain participant record. There's no need for that extra word in front of it. All you're doing is going to the participant record. And if we go to the participant record, you'll see that it pretty much looks the same, okay? So, like I said, things here really haven't changed. Since we're here on a staff page, I'll show you the left navigation. Currently, if I'm in IOL admin and I go to my little breadcrumbs in the upper left, all I can do is go to other pages within IOL admin. Now, if I open up that navigation, it opens up the full staff menu. It does open my current menu that I'm looking at, in this case, IOL admin. But if I scroll down, it shows me all the other menus that I have access to in the system. So I don't always have to go back to that staff dashboard. If I wanted to go to statistics and look at my borrower statistics, I can do that directly from the participant record without having to go back and forth all the time. A couple of other things that are different on staff pages is that currently in the upper right, there are little icons right next to the little X that are for print, refresh, and home. They're no longer in that location. They are always available though on your staff pages using this little black arrow. And when I hover, it says expand for home, refresh, print. So if I wanted to go home or refresh this page or print, they're right there. Let's go back to the full staff dashboard here. A couple of other changes in the ILL admin menu are that currently we have two things called maintain, I think they're called maintain shipping labels and maintain book straps, but all you're doing is printing them. So again, we changed, rather than dropping the word, we changed the word maintain to print. So it actually says what you're doing. So if you want to print your shipping labels, you go to print shipping labels, and that'll bring up your shipping labels screen. Some other changes on this particular menu is that we have pulled together everything that actually is configuring something into a configuration submenu. So this is where you would configure your pick list and your request forms. Your currently, if you're configuring your request forms, you get that big grid that has your request forms and your full record display, and you select everything on the big grid and what sequence things go in. We have changed how you configure the request form itself. So we'll take a look at that in just one moment. Just want to go through the staff dashboard again for a couple of minutes here, and then we'll look at configuring the request form. The documentation menu has changed, so it's now called support. User guides and videos for each product, because we do have multiple products and some of them share user guides and things, will all be brought together. So if we click on share it, everything that has to do with share it will be listed on this page. Unfortunately, I can't show it to you because that's one thing they are still working on. It's not here in this demo site, okay? But rather than have the user guides on one big page and a big grid and then a bunch of videos on another page, anything that has to do with share it, which is what SRCS uses, will be listed on that page, all right? The other menus, have not changed. They look a bit different. They're not all underlined anymore. When you hover over them, they underline to show that they are a link, and this little plus sign appears to the right. And what that means is that I'm able to add things to my quick links menu just by clicking on the plus sign. So it says add to quick links. When I do that, it immediately added borrower statistics to that menu. So I don't have to open up a new page, a new interface, a new screen in order to edit my quick menu, which used to have that little, currently has the little pencil in the upper right for the quick menu. Quick links, I just click the little plus sign and that adds it to that menu. I'm refreshing the screen because, and this is in our demo site, and I've reported this, and I know it was fixed in our QA sites. They just haven't updated this one, this particular version here. But whenever I added my borrower statistics, my heart, which is my quick links menu, still only shows 2. And if I click that, I'm only seeing the 2 that were already there, the request manager and the title browse, not those borrower statistics that I just added. But like I said, I know that it does work in the versions that we're QAing. The demo site just has not been updated. But I can, once I have my quick menu open, I can use it to go directly to anything in that menu. And it says waiting in the lower left. It's loading here. So here's my borrower's title browse. I can use the little cross if I wanted to drag things up or down to change the order. It always shows me the full staff dashboard. So if I was on a results screen and for some reason my staff dashboard wasn't showing up as a link in the stripe here, I would be able to use my my quick links to get to it, and it also continues to show me my 3 most recent staff menus that I used. One thing that has changed is that control keys are no longer used for the quick links. You can't do like control 1 to get to title browse, but when you're on a staff page, they'll show across the top what your quick links, and so you can also get to them this way just by clicking on them. I think that was the big review of the staff dashboard. And we're going to take a look now at configuring the request form, and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back. So in the configuration menu, I'm going to select Configure Request Forms. And this is a very nice change because it's no longer a big grid. You don't have to select what sequence you want things to display in. It's pretty much a what you see is what you get type of form. And let me just go through it from the top. First of all, there's 4 different types of request forms you can configure. There's a returnable for staff, so that's for anything that's a loan. There is a non-returnable for staff, and this one is going to have different fields, like ISSN, article title, article information, that type of thing. And then there are also the same 2 types of fields for your patrons, either returnables or non-returnables. We'll just take a look at the staff returnable one, just so I can go through what we have here as options. First of all, on the field itself, it shows the system name for the field, which is, this case, title/journal title. If that's not what I wanted to say, I can change that and say I just want it to be called title. All right? So I always know what the system name is, but I can change it to something different. Same as the author, the creator. Let's go down to this any edition is acceptable field. And I just want to show you that, here's where I would set whether I want that to be required. Oh, in this case, it's required by the system. There are certain fields that can be set system-wide to be required, and others that can be configured locally. So in this case, the title is required. I can't uncheck that. I have to have a title in a request. If I scroll down and look at the again, the patron's email, this one is, because the way this demo system was set up, is it's being required system-wide. I can't even uncheck that one, okay? But there are certain ones that I would be able to say, like the borrower's note, I could, and that one cannot be made required. Sometimes you have to sort of click through to see what you can do and what you can't do. So you cannot make something required like a borrower's note, because that doesn't make sense, right? But you are able to, I'm trying to find one that's clickable. They took them all away from me. Let's see, I'm going to see this one, the little red X. I hover over it, it turns red. I just removed the borrower's notes. So that's no longer even on my form. I'm not going to let anybody do a borrower's note. I took the field away. There's a list up here called inactive fields. So these are all of the fields that I have removed. So they're no longer active. And I can add any back that I want. Let's say volumes needed. If I wanted to add that back as a field, I just added volumes needed. It immediately goes to the top of the list. I can leave it there if I want it, or I can use the little cross and drag it to wherever I think would make most sense. So the list has just been updated. And so there's my volumes needed field. So you can easily move things around, put them in the order that you want them to be in. you can easily remove fields and then realize, oh, I need that back. Let's say I want to have the addition in here. I can add addition. It shows up at the top of the screen, and again, I would just drag it. If I want to have addition right after title, I can do that. Once I've made a bunch of changes, I can go ahead and click Save, and that's been saved. So I see right on the screen how, what order things will be in, basically how they'll look. And I just move them around until I get the form that I want. Then once I do place a request, ooh, here's a good title, Librarians Are Human. You never know what you're going to find. If I click Request This Item, so here before the title was called title/journal title, I just changed it to title. It's changed to title. The volumes needed field is right here. So you can easily go ahead and update your forms to make them more meaningful for your library. And it's always nice to be able to have things different for your patrons and your staff, because if staff are doing some more intense requesting or things more specialized, you might want to make more fields available to them. Any questions or comments from the group?
No, we had a little bit more concern about the patron email, but I think, as I understand it, we'll be able to remove that ourselves once we go.
Don't worry. Again, I'm working off a demo system here. There are some things that are set in it system-wide, some that aren't. People go in and make changes to it without me knowing or telling me, so I'm just getting surprised. But don't worry, your system is going to work the way it currently does. The big thing to understand is that your requesting won't change, although the look of the form is going to change, and doing your interlibrary loans is not going to change.
That was it.
Okay.
Questions. So
cool. Should we take like a 15-minute? Is that good?
Sounds good.
Okay, 15-minute break.
It's 10:09 right now, Indianapolis time, so we'll be back at, what is that? Okay, hi everybody, we're back. I'm trying to process some of the questions from the chat box, and we're going to just try to go through a couple of them really quickly. We were asked about whether or not libraries who don't loan DVDs, whether we can just remove those or not display those somehow, and I'm going to let Debbie kind of cover what our options are for that.
Yeah, it depends on whether or not you are part of the Union catalog or set up as a Z-target. Libraries that are part of the Union catalog, if you don't lend DVDs, the best option is to simply not load, have them as part of your load for the catalog, because then they just won't be in SRCS at all, and people won't see them and won't think they can borrow them. If you're a Z-target, you can map them as not lendable. And I have to confess here, I am going to have to get back to Nicole on this and let her follow up with you, because I believe there is a change coming in V6, but I'll be honest, I'm drawing a total blank on it at the moment. But I think we'll be able to have them so that they just don't display, or the request button not display. I think that's what it is, but I have to verify. I apologize.
And then, let's see, we had a question. Let me find it.
DVDs are always issues.
Yeah. Oh, we had someone who asked a question about if there's a way for them to get notifications when patrons have placed a request on their own. So if they allow patron-initiated requests, can they get notified?
Yes. It would be in your participant record. So let me click on that. And it would be a staff notice. Now, you can't do it, and this is borrower emails, so anytime a new request is placed, you can get notification of that. Now, you can't limit it to only new requests placed by patrons. It's going to be every new request that's placed, you'll get an email about it. All right. But you could do that. You would put in, an email address, just like any of your email notifications, and you could only put in one address, not multiples. Click off new request. You're able to configure the form. There's default text here, a new borrowing request, and this request ID, this information, the # request ID #, that's going to go and pull the actual request ID number from the request. So those things are in there for your convenience so that you can see right away, your library code, and you can change some of this text if you want, but you can have in the patron's name, patron's last name, that information here. So you are able to get a request. Like I said, it's going to be every single request, not just those placed by patrons. That's interesting, though. That's a good question.
Somebody kind of elaborated on that question and wanted to know if there's a way to like get a list or a report sort of maybe of patron-based requests or in addition to those emails or as a different option. And I don't recall ever seeing that, but that's an interesting question.
No. Do you do most of your requests by patrons or by staff, or is it a total mix?
I think it's a total mix as far as I know.
Yeah, right now there's no real way of like separating them out. The only way to see the difference is if you run I always forget what things are called. If you run in the activity and request reports, if you run a borrowing activity report, it will show you there whether the request is staff or patron placed. But it's something you have to go in and run. It's not a way to just get an easy list. That's sort of interesting, though. Patron-based request emails. The other thing that you can do is you are able to, in your user accounts, I'm going to go in and put in, if I look at patrons, I'm not sure if just my patron will come up. They won't. All kinds of patrons come up, but I do last name of reader. Let me look at my ILL permissions. So you can have your, if your request for patrons, if they're automatically approved, that means that they'll immediately go out to libraries and go into pending status at a library. But if you don't check that off, they'll go into awaiting approval. So you always see your patron requests. That might be the way to do it. You'll always see your patron request in awaiting approval status, and then you as staff have to approve them or not. You decide whether or not to send them on or not to send them on. So that might be a way to do it, is to don't give your patrons automatic approval, or certain patrons don't give them automatic approval and review those requests.
We had another question that's, I think, related to the request form about whether there's an option to have two separate notes, one that can be kept private for the library itself and then one that the loaning library can see.
I don't believe there is, but that's a good question. There's not. Right now it's just, so you mean one that, repeat that, one that the patron?
One that I think is just for staff is what it sounds like, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was Bethany's question.
Borrower's notes. Yeah, currently no. That's a good question. That's a good one, though. I'll make a note of that too. We're always looking for things that people are asking about and ways to sort of improve things. So, other questions?
There was one about whether we'll need to go in and reset all of our settings, or will they carry over?
word on the street is that things will carry over, all right? But anytime I've done any sort of a migration in any sort of a system, you always want to go in and double check things and make sure that things are the way that you want them to be, okay? So you should be all set. That's part of what we're in the process of testing now, is we're doing some mock migrations and things and looking at everything. But I would still always go in and verify for yourself that things are there or not, because you might have one odd little setting that for some reason did not make it. Okay.
Okay, I think there are several other questions kind of coming in the chat, but I want to take a second to kind of process those. So I'm going to let Debbie go on with the next bit of her presentation, because most of the questions are a little bit all over the place. They're not necessarily they're great questions, so I'm going to get to them, but they're not necessarily tied into what we were just talking about. So I'm going to process them and get them in a way that this kind of flows a little bit. Okay, and so we're going to let Debbie do the next step, and I'll be working on questions.
Cool, thank you. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the SAP Dashboard, and there was another really big change here that I didn't mention when we were looking at before, and that's because I wanted to take some time to go through it, and that's in the UX admin menu. There's only one menu item here. It's called Settings. And if we select that, what it does is it opens up on the left your UX admin settings. Since this is where you can go in and set a bunch of these defaults and options and things that I said you can set this, you can set that. Whether you want type ahead turned on or highlighting turned on, you do all of that basically in the UX admin settings. So we're just going to go through and run down. I'm just going to open up these menus, show them to you. We're not going to get into super detail on a lot of these things, but if you have questions specifically on what I'm talking about, please go ahead and ask, and we'll drive Nicole crazy by monitoring even more questions coming in.
No, keep them coming. I just got to think a little bit.
Okay, so the first one is for login, and this is how the login is going to behave. So we have your login form options. And this is where you have your instructional text, enter your library card and password. If you want the forgot password link on or not. If you don't, you would turn that off. Most people would leave it turned on, so you can see blue means it's on. If it's not colors, in this case blue, because that's the color theme we have on here. If it's not in a color, that means it's turned off. What you wanted to save for the username label, in this case it says library card. The password prompt, if you wanted to say password or PIN or enter your password, you can do that. The forgot password email text. I do want to mention that we do have a change in how forgot passwords are going to work. And currently, if you click the forgot password link, what it does is it very kindly sends you your password in plain text over the email. Woo! Not super secure, not real good, okay? So we have changed that with V6, and what's going to happen now is that it's not going to send you this text saying the password that's associated with your account is whatever it is. It's going to do like your bank and everything else in the world does, is it's going to send you an email with a link to click to reset your password. All right, so that is going to change. You still will be able to put text into this box saying like, the Indiana Public Library, sorry, you have having trouble with your password. Follow the instructions below. You can do, put something, personalize it if you want, but it's not going to continue to send that passwords in plain text, which isn't the best thing in the world. Anytime, as always, if you make changes, you want to make sure you click the save button. All right, that's just sort of common, what's going on. And then, this is where you set, and I'm not sure, this might be a customer super user setting as to what libraries display for login. Certain things that I might show you, you may not actually have access to, but the login one, you'll be able to customize that. Search and results, this is where you get an awful lot of ability to make changes to how things display. So the quick search is using the basic search bar across the top. So if we take a look at this, this is where you decide, if you want to display an index selection at all, whether you want to display a resource selection, and you do it by staff or patrons, and whether you want that type ahead turned on or off. All right. And also what you want as the search box default index. If you want it to be all headings, if you wanted to default to title, you make these changes in the quick search. The search results, this is where you decide how you want the initial, what defaults you want for the initial search results. So in this case, we can see that the default results view for patrons and staff is both as gallery view rather than as list view. You can have it different for patrons and staff. If you want the print option to display or not, if you want the jacket art to display on the list view, format sequence. This is a good one to be aware that it's here. The format sequence is for the facets that display on the left. Currently in V5, they pretty much display by number of titles. So if something has, if there's a lot of results for that particular facet, they'll display at the top, but they may not be in any order that makes real sense, okay? And you can just say that you want everything to display alphabetical, regardless of how many results there are. So then it makes it a lot easier to find what you're looking for in a list. And hey, we're librarians, we look at things alphabetically, right? So you can set that. The enable search highlights. For our patrons, we have it set to no currently in this system and set to yes for staff. And that's where we saw whenever I searched for Harry Potter before I was logged in, nothing was highlighted. As soon as I logged in, it retained the search and Harry Potter was highlighted everywhere. So this is where you set this in UX admin in your search results screen. The other thing is the show search grouping options. We had it set for no to patron and staff for yes, and that is the ability to change between whether you're looking at your results clustered or merged. If you want patrons to be able to do that, you would want to set this to yes. All right. If you don't want them to do that, you would set it to no. And currently they can't do that, and staff can't either. It's set, and you just get however it's set, and you can't change it on the fly. If you think it might cause problems for people, in the library or at home who don't understand maybe, and it might generate a lot of questions, you might want to just decide how you want them to see it. Don't let them change it, but let staff change it, because staff might want that ability to be able to turn it on or off. And then you decide here what the default results grouping is, again, for patrons and staff, and what the default results sort is. So this is what I mean. If you just want your patrons to see things as clustered or as merged, you can set that and not let them change it. But if you want to allow them to change it, set it to yes and save it. You'll get success, okay, at the top of the screen. And so you've just made the change. 0 results. This is where you can set specific text for if there are absolutely no results for a search. Need help? See our search help page. And it says select text to format. If you create a hyperlink, it should be a fully qualified URL. So you have to make sure you do the HTTP, HTTPS, whatever. So this is where you could say, can't find what you're looking for? Use our chat with a librarian service to give them the link directly to that. All right. Whenever you highlight text, it brings up a little, the options to change the header type, so what font size it's in. This is where you can make something a link. You can do a quote, make it bold, italics, underline. If you want it to be centered, you can do that. And then anytime you make changes, you would save them. So in this case, if you put some nice little text in there and somebody didn't find any results, you could send them to, you know, you might just have a page made up on some search tips or something and direct them to that. Somebody took away, I had a link to the lyrics to the Beatles' Help. Somebody took it out, bummer. So it was sort of cute. The brief record display. This is how you set what you want the brief record display to look like. And let's take a look at this. So here we have various tags. So the 245, if you want the title to be in the brief display, the author, this is where you set what fields you want. Now this is our current profile. If you wanted to create a new profile, you can do that. You can add new fields. You put in the tag ID, any subfields that you want, and what label you want to show. And that's how you create a new brief record display profile. The best thing is to probably go by what your defaults are and then see if you want any changes. Now I should mention that that's only the brief record display. And it hasn't been updated, I'm sorry, in the demo system. But now in Pack Admin, rather than having record display profiles, this is going to be your full record display profile. Right now in V5, when you go to the record display profiles, you set the display profile for your full display or your brief display. In V6, the full display is still going to be in Pack Admin, but, and don't ask me why, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, they moved the brief display to UX Admin. Sometimes these things happen and I can't explain them very well, but there you go. So you'll still set your full record display profile in Pack Admin. Get back to the settings, and we were in search and results. Facets management, this is where you decide what facets you want to display for patrons and for staff, patron guests. When we say patrons in UX Admin, we're talking patron/guest, or staff can be different. They can be in a different order. In this case, we are not showing certain ones for patrons, but we're showing everything for staff. So again, if you make any changes, make sure you always click Submit to save those. The full record, this is where you decide what's going to be the full record. It's called a tab. It's really what's going to appear at the top of the screen. If you want the details, this is for staff. If you want details to appear at the top, you would select that. If you think they're more interested in the mark display, you can have that appear first whenever a staff member opens up the full record. And you can change what you call things. If you don't want details to be details, you can make it something different. If you want mark display, you might want it to say mark record. Okay, just change it. Don't do any typos or else it'll stay there forever. So type in mark record, and then if I come down and click save, the next time I logged in as a staff person and looked at a full record, the first thing I'm going to see is the mark record called the mark record. Okay, and you can do the same type of thing for your patrons and guests. Change what they see and in what order, you know, I mean, which one shows up first. And you can also, if you don't want to display the mark view for anyone but staff, you can do that. Only check staff, and then patrons and guests won't see the mark view. So this is, you know, just deciding what you want to show on the full record for your patrons and staff. The advanced search. Here's the advanced search settings, and this is where I saw that funky little filters hyphen AAAAA, and I said, people keep doing that to me. They keep changing the names of things. So if you just want the filters tab to say filters, you can do that. Because filters are usually what you use before conducting a search, or pre-filtering, and facets are what you use after doing the search in order to save, in order to narrow down the search. So I just got rid of that hyphen AAAAA. And you can change the resources tab label. So this just allows you to change those labels on the advanced search and whether you want the type ahead to work on advanced search. The other, oh, and then the advanced search qualifiers, that's right. So, and here they're called qualifiers. Again, they're the filters, what you want to show for your patrons or guests or for staff. And again, you can just change the names of things. You can, change in what order things appear. If you want awards to be further up, you can change that. You just updated your list. Okay. And then always click submit. And you just rearrange the order of how your filters are appearing on the advanced search. On the web links, this is if you, we have this wonderful one here called web links, and just click on that. So this is where if you just want to have a list of different links for people, you can do that. And back in UX admin, we go back into our search and results web links. This is where we said we want to display them on a separate tab. So that means across the top here, if they're not displayed on a separate tab, they're going to be displayed in the resources screen. And you can have that different for your patrons and guests or staff. So if I'm looking at the web links, currently we have everything, all our web links displaying on a separate tab, whether you're logged in or not, patron, staff, it doesn't matter. But you can say, well, for my staff, I want the web links to be on the Choose Resources screen. So if I made that change, those web links when I'm logged in as a staff person are going to show up on the resources page rather than as a separate tab. Login, search and results. We're going to look at pages in a minute and design in a minute. Let's take a look at these staff options, because this is just where you decide what order the tabs are going to be in, called tabs, the menus on the staff dashboard, okay? And you can, always move these things around. So that's one of the things that's been made very nice. It's easy to just reconfigure a lot of these pages to make it more useful for your staff. We look at design. I know sort of taking things out of order here. But design, this is where we make some changes on things like logo and title, themes and styles, and footers. So logo and title, this is where we're looking at this information, at the top of the screen here, all right? So in this case, we have link details. When I hover over my, in this case, a little share it logo, it says patron initiated, library managed, yada yada, resource sharing. And that's where I put in that link. So my link details, when you hover over the logo or title, this text is shown. If you want that to be an active link, so whenever I click the logo or the title, if it's a logo or just the library name, I can have a link. So if I want to have that go directly to my library's homepage, I can do that. So that's in your logo and title selection. This display select language selector, I think because it's right next to the library name, it's listed under logo and title. I think they just couldn't find another place to put it. So just remember, if you want to display that or not, you'll find the language selector under logo and title. And then the branding information. In this case, we chose to use an image, the Share It logo that's right here. You could just use the library name if you want. You can use custom text if you want, or you can use an image and text if you want. All right. Most people would, the default is just to use your library's name, but if you want to get fancy and change that and put your library's logo up here, go for it. All right. So if you, upload an image, you would choose the file, it would upload, show you the image right here. If you decide that's, that's correct, that's the one you want, you would save it, and it'll appear in the upper left. Also under design are themes and styles. And this is where, again, I have to say that the demo site, by not being on the recent version, is not showing, it should be showing me the current theme that I'm using. And it's not. I can tell you I'm using the light blue theme, okay? But so I can select a theme if I want. If I wanted to use the, let's use orange today. It changes immediately. I can see what that's going to look like. All right. If I want to save it, click the little save button. Here's the light blue. So I just went back to that one. Or I can select a whole new theme. And this allows me to customize things so that I can get really, design happy on what colors I want to use. I would put in a theme name, and then I select what colors I want to use for these different parts of the system. And they're broken out into header, footer, body, buttons, content, background color, and it gives me a little question mark next to each. So in this first one for the header, it's telling me this is going to apply to the header foreground text and quick links text color. It's black, all right? But I can change that if I want, and if I, I can put in the, if I know the color that I want to use, or I can just click in that box and change it. If I wanted to make them all, purple, I could do that. And you can see how the text has changed to this lovely purple color. All right. So it allows you to go through and make those, color changes. Most people just go ahead and select a theme and go with it. But if it's not working out quite the way you want, or you want to make something, pop a little bit, go ahead and play around in your themes and styles. Yeah, that was the last one there. And then footer options. This is where you can put a footer in. So if you want to have a footer in saying something particular, lots of times libraries will have something, you might just want to have a footer in with your basic library information. Because remember, this is the SRCS, this resource sharing. It's not your library homepage, but once people are there, you might want to give them a little bit more information so you can put a footer in. And I'm going to show you how to use a footer, whatever, we're actually going to go back in and look at the pages. And that'll give you a little bit more information on how to set, use these pages and set them up. Any questions specific to anything I just covered there before I look at pages?
I don't think so. The other questions were just kind of overall questions. I don't see any about the UX admin.
Okay. I just want to give you a sort of a brief look here at using pages and creating new pages. Because when we look at, let me close that. I just clicked the home button. So this is sort of the generic home page that we set up for this demo system. If I go back into my UX admin and my settings here and go to pages, I can see that I have two active pages. One's called my home page. That's the one we just looked at. One's called TENN. I was just at the Tennessee Library Conference last week. All right. And so I created a page for them. And then I have some non-active pages. You can tell where I've been doing some training. All right. Because I've created some different pages. And I was going to try and create a fancy page for you today, but I'm working on not my computer, so the stuff I was going to use isn't here. But I can still go through and show you how to do a sort of basic page, all right? So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to create a new page. So what you do when you want to create a new page is you give it a page title, and I'm going to call it SRCS, all right? And then you select the page layout. So you have these different sort of design options to choose, you know, blocks, formats. So if you want to do just a basic page, you would just select something with a couple of blocks. If you wanted to be able to break things out and have, you know, a couple images and some text and different things, you might want to select a different type of layout. This same system is used by our libraries that use our ILS Verso, and a lot of them get really, really fancy on their pages, all right? So you might look and say, why would I want to do something with all these boxes? Some of them do have all these little pictures and links and clicks to things, so that's why all these options are here. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Page, and what it does is just opens up a template. So I had selected a page that had those 3 boxes on it, and I now have these 3 blue boxes. Then it gives me a choose option, and if I hover, it's saying choose a component. When I click here, this is where I now select what type of information I want to put in on this page in this particular box, all right? If I wanted to do a call to action, remember that's where I said you can do something like donate to the library or keep IOL alive. You can put in a title, you know, donate for interlibrary loan. So you just put in your title, call to action, background, like font color. You can just select whatever color you would want that font to be, okay? And then you would choose an image and give it a URL. And so that is going to then direct people to whatever page it is you want them to act on, all right? I'm going to close that one. And an image block works sort of the same way in that you can give it a title or not. If you give it a title, it's going to show up. So if you're going to put a picture up or a photograph or something, if you give it a title, it will show up on the page. If you just want the picture there, don't give it a title. All right.
Accessibility purposes, how do you put in the tag so that you can have screen readers say what the picture is?
Good question.
The question was about accessibility and screen reader purposes, if there's a place to put the tag.
I don't think there is a way. Can't believe that's the first time that question's come up. Properties. I have to double check on that and see if I'm wrong. But no, currently there's not a way to do that. I'm going to look at another page in a second, all right? There's also ways of doing different carousels. A list, so this would be a list carousel would be you would create a list and then using the titles in that list. And I only have one list selected, but you would then have a little carousel of those titles. So I just created a little showcase of my 2 titles. If I had a lot of titles, they would all be rolled across the top here. And I'm still in the editing view, so that's why I'm still seeing the blue box and everything. But this would allow me to create, you know, have a carousel going of different things if I wanted to do that. If I realize, oh, I really don't want that there, it looks sort of stupid, there's only 2 titles, I can just say delete previous row and it goes away. Text block is pretty much the easiest. It's just going to be a big block of text, and it tells me I can select the text and have options. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and well, I'm going to try and control the mouse, and I'm just going to type in SRCS, and then I'm going to highlight it and say I want it, pretty large, I want it bold, I want it centered, and I want the color to be this lovely green because it's spring, and I want the background to be a dark blue color, and you can put in the if you know your little numbers that you want, you can add those in. I'm lazy, I just click on colors and go with it. So I just put in a big text block for SRCS, saved a couple colors. If I want to see what it looks like, I can click preview, and there it is. If I save it, I now just saved that on the screen. So you can type in text, you can copy and paste text in. Once you have it in there, you can format it, you can make spaces between things and make everything look nice. And again, I can then add another, add more components if I want. If I don't want to add any more components, that's, I'm just going to have it say SRCS. I can do that. If I click Save Page Settings, I now just save my page settings, but it's not showing up. It's not listed up here. It's not anywhere. And that's because I didn't make it active. I didn't make it a home page. I didn't do anything with it yet. If I go back to my settings and into my pages, it's listed as a non-active page because I forgot to do the final pieces. So let's go in and take a look at the SRCS page again. And, oh, that's weird. It just blanked it out. Huh. I don't know why it just did that. I'll be honest with you. That's sort of weird. I always wish I could just use the development site to do these, but you can't because they're really always working on those. I'm just going to make it in blue this time. Very plain, just says SRCS. Along the top are my page properties, and this is where I set whether it's active, who gets to see it, who doesn't get to see it, that type of thing. So I'm just logged in as a library, not as a customer super user or anything. So I'm just setting this for my library, and I can say whether I want it to be active now or active on a particular date. If I selected active on a date, I then have to enter in what date I want to make this active. If I say active now, I can just make it active now. And let me do that. I'll go ahead and save my page settings. So it's active, but as a link across the top. All right, it's just a page that people can go to. If I go to home, the welcome to share it is still my home page. If I wanted to make that little SRCS page be my home page, and it keeps disappearing. That is so weird. I'll be honest with you, that is a new one, and it makes me wonder what's going on. So I will check into that. I guarantee you that's not the way it's normally happening. So,
I have a question.
yes.
If libraries have already created a page and have widgets existing, what will happen when we switch to these?
The question is what happens if
Thank
you
you.
have your widgets and pages already set up now? What will happen when we switch to V6?
And what will happen? We are currently, like I said, testing all of that. Your colors and everything will move over. They may not be exactly as they are now. And the reason is currently in version 5, you only have an option to set different colors for like 6 different places. And now there's a lot more different places. So what our developers had to do was to sort of set up a sort of algorithm like, okay, if this is set here, it's pretty much going to match into here in V6, but it might not be exact. So you might want to go in and take a look and maybe change some of that. So that it should move over. The ones we've tested are really close. That's color-wise. As far as your other, if you currently have widgets and things set up, they should move over, but I'm not actually going to be able to guarantee that today. And that's because there are differences in how the actual pages have been designed and how the whole software is functioning on the back end. And so they are testing that, but there is a concern that it may be that you move something over and it simply doesn't work because the back end is so very different. And so would it be any good to have something, have something that's currently a link, but have it move over, but not do anything? Probably not. If things do not move over, our customer service people are going to be able to help you recreate anything that you have there. Does anybody currently have like a really complicated page? Anybody in the room? Or if you have something really complicated, if you let us know in advance, we'll make sure that we're able to help you get it set up the way that you need it. If it's a matter of simply, colors and some basic things, we should be okay. So I just set the SRCS, the sad little just SRCS, sorry I didn't get any pictures here, set up as the home page, so it's no longer a link across the top because I made it the home page. All right. Anytime you have pages set up, if you like I said, you can set pages to go live on certain days, or you can just have multiple pages if you wanted to have one set up for something, and it was currently non-active. You can just go ahead and say, okay, I want to make it active. It's active now. I'm not going to make it a home page. I just took a page I had and made it active. It immediately shows up as a link, and there it is. All right. I had my own computer for there, so I was able to use my logos. So, but it's really relatively easy to do the page setup. I said relatively. All right. I'm not promising it's the super easiest. But it's a lot more user friendly than currently having to like create a widget and get it all set up and then put it someplace on a page. Does it fit? Is it where I want it to be? It'll just show up immediately on the screen. You can preview it and change things around as needed. That's the last that I had on UX admin, is my little brief go through, unless there's something in particular, questions on it or something anybody wanted to see that I missed.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions on user admin or UX admin. Feel free to keep sending them in if you do have them. We did have a couple comments. Somebody said it looks like too many options. Somebody said thanks for so many options. So it's a little bit. That's
my life. That's my life. Yes.
Everybody. Yeah. So I think and personally, it does look a lot easier than the previous way of doing it. So that's helpful.
Yeah, it can look like a lot. I do agree with you there. It can look like a lot, but it does make the system then work the way that you want it to work. And anytime you have any questions or problems with it, just contact. We'll be happy to help you. I'm using the royal we. We'll be happy to help you.
Between us, we'll figure it out.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So if your content is finished, so I think I've processed these questions from before.
Okay.
And we're going to probably keep getting more coming in as we go, but we can start early with these other ones.
Yeah, because we have about 45 minutes. So, I mean, if we spend the rest of the time with questions.
Yeah. We're going to go through some questions, and I think before we go, we wanted to take a little bit of time to go through kind of just a general ILL process for everybody in case we have some newer people on board, and just so we can kind of get it recorded with how it looks with the new version, even though the process is not changing at all. So we're going to go through these questions first, and then once we get finished with them, and we can, if you're already super confident about the ILL process, you can drop off with no worries there. So we had a question that actually just came in. I'll go with that one first. It says, is there a way to limit a patron to only 3 requests without using the moderated mode?
Yeah, you do it in figures. I have to, I'll tell you, I'm patron groups or categories. My head's been so much in the new stuff that we've been doing, that some of the basic stuff, I'm going to have to go back in and say, like, now where do I set that one? I just came into patron groups. You can limit as to how many people can have, and if I don't find it here quickly, I'm going to say that I'll get back to you. Okay. Categories. Yeah, no, I'm going to have to go back and find that. Seriously, I'll tell you, our heads have been so much into this version recently that sometimes, like, the basic stuff, like now if I go and I look at your, like if I went to log into your current system, I'd be like, oh, this looks so different because the fonts are changed and everything.
In a similar vein, this might be in the same place. We had a question about whether there's a way to block problem patrons. If you're using the patron initiated request.
Yeah, you can go in, just look for your patron, and I'm going to look for my my avid reader patron, and go into their ILL permissions and just take away their ability to borrow requests. Okay.
Okay.
And save it, and they can't place requests anymore. So
that sounds like it answered Allison's question.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that's the easy one, because you can always block people down to the individual person like that.
So we had another question about ebooks, which is listed as a format, but they're not lendable within SRCS, correct? And that's true, they're not lendable. But I wondered, Debbie, if there's anything you could say about how the search results are being displayed, or that kind of thing that might help some of those ebooks that are kind of still visible in here.
Yeah, yeah, that's always an interesting one, because sorry, I keep using Harry Potter just because I can. Well, because Harry always brings back results. I just want to see if anything pops up here for results. Ebooks will show up. Again, in V6, there will be, we'll definitely be able to show that those are not requestable, so there won't even be a request button for them. And I'm not sure if you have like statewide ebooks that show up, or if these are local library e-resources that are showing up. Okay. Yeah. 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 They will be able to be displayed so that they're not showing with a request button, but the results will still be there, and that's sort of the.
Yeah, and I know sometimes the cataloging kind of messes things up. Like it'll be all the titles go onto a request that is an ebook, even though there's books underneath it. At least that was an issue, or currently is an issue sometimes, just the way things are cataloged and bunched together. I wasn't sure if there was anything.
Yeah, and that's, how things are cataloged is always part of the problem. Okay, so if we take a look, I just looked at these two. They're marked as e-videos, and there is no request. There's no option here to request them. So I was going to say, I think we can actually do that now in V5. They should be marked as non-requestable, but to make them not appear,
I think
no. If that's one of the things about using the Z targets, is you're going to get the whole system.
Yeah, I think sometimes they just sneak through based on the way they're cataloged, and I think
Yeah,
that
that's
probably is going to be the same.
Yeah, that
I
happens
just
too,
wanted to make
especially
sure.
on things where there's like multiple ISBNs and records.
Mhm. Okay. We had a question about how often the union catalogs are updated, just to know, I guess.
Well, I
Do
don't.
we know?
I think originally we requested they updated and then
Okay. The answer in the room from Jen is that the original request was to ask the libraries to update those every 3 months, but we're not quite sure how often that's happening. If anybody out there is doing that, send in something in on the chat so we know.
Yeah, that's usually a pretty local thing. And lots of times people ask me like, "Well, how often should I do it?" You know, and a lot, that answer really depends on your library and how, what kinds of changes are being made. If you get like little bits of um, acquisitions along the way, you might not, you don't want to do a bunch of little changes. But if you're going through a massive weeding, when that's done, that's a good time to do a new update of your records so that all that stuff that's been weeded is no longer going to be in there for people to think they can get from you.
Yeah. And Julie's in the chat saying she usually does it once a month. And that is, she says it's
That's
much
impressive.
easier to do it now since you changed how you do the FTP. So
Oh, yeah.
in case anybody out there is scared about it, apparently it's easier now.
Yeah, it is. Well, it used to be like an FTP thing, and now it's just uploading to the cloud, I believe. I have to be honest, I don't actually ever do that,
Yeah.
but I've heard that too, that it's way easier now, so.
All right. A similar kind of local options question we had was about the mention earlier today of borrowing non-returnable items or copies. And it's true, I think in the original rollout of SRCS that was, we were just not doing it. But I think you'll notice that it is kind of visible on all of your instances of SRCS. And so I think we're probably going to have to discuss a little bit about like how to promote it or whether or not to make it more widely available, but it is kind of there. I don't know how many things that are being loaded into the catalog qualify as non-returnable in the first place. So we're kind of going to keep an eye on that one and get back to you more about that.
Yeah, because that one too, if I can just jump in, that's even becoming less used because so many, what people request as non-returnables tend to be journal articles, and so much of that now is just available online that you don't need to request a particular article. But it can be helpful if it is something local, or if it is some really old magazine that you can't find electronically, but a particular library happens to have. Like this little tiny public library I worked in, we had like back issues of like a couple of these magazines that it just went back forever and nobody else in the state had them, but they all knew we had them. So it can be useful for certain things.
Okay. We had one more question about whether we discussed the 3 icons on the top right above the logout, and I'm not sure we mentioned them specifically. So.
Oh, these 3?
Mm-hmm.
No, I sort of touched on them differently, 2 of them individually. The first one is for your list, and so that's where I think I showed you this. You can look at you can create a new list, use your list, add things to your list. If you're in a record and you want to add something, you can save it to your list. When you do that, actually, thanks for the question because I didn't actually show you. This has changed a little bit. If you click on to add something to your list, you'll get a little pop-up, in this case on the right, where you can create a new list or add it to an existing list. So if I were to just click library, it would add this Harry Potter book to my library list. If I wanted to create a new list, I could call one called HP, all right? And so my item was added to my list. I now have 2 lists if I look at my list. And here's my HP list with 1 item in it, and there's my library list with 2 items in it. So the first icon is just for your list. The second icon, that's your quick links. that you set on your SAP Dashboard. You know, just by clicking the little plus, it adds something to your quick links. The last icon is for notifications. And I don't recall, do we do notifications in Indiana? Okay, is that what we do? Okay, because all our customers are different. So the last one is for notifications, and this would just be we're only using it in Indiana if we're doing an update and the system's going to be down. You'll get a little message saying the system's down. Most of the time, you're going to, it's just going to say there's no notifications at this time. If there is one, it'll have a little 1 there. So if there was if you logged in and saw a little 1, that would mean there's a notification, but it's not super important. It's just informational. So you can just click on it at any time, and then they expire after a certain date. Here's an example. I was at a conference for another state last week, and they wanted me to put in a notification for their libraries, alerting them to a particular session that was happening about this update that we're doing. So I put that in, all right? And then it expired the day of that meeting. And there also could be an alert where when you log in, you'll see the alert and you have to acknowledge that you saw it before you can do anything. And that would be like a system downtime saying, hey, the system's going to be down, Tuesday night for an update, beginning a little after 7 p.m.
We had a question about how long the lists remain available.
Oh, when you create a list until you delete the list. Okay. That was an easy one. Another softball. Throw them at me.
I think, unless I am missing something, I think I've covered all the questions that were asked. We had a little bit of a discussion in the chat about hung holds and evergreen, which is, I think, a common issue with SRCS. And so if anybody in the room has issues with that, please talk to me afterwards, because it's not something that Debbie can help us with, and we have resources for you guys on how to fix those. We're not going to take time today.
I haven't worn my evergreen hat in a few years now.
Yeah. So we know that that's a common thing, and we have ways to troubleshoot that. So we can talk about that offline.
We have ways to deal with that. Any questions in the room? We've been going through the chat and no? All
right. I think, would you mind putting back up this slide, like the very first slide of your presentation where we were talking about when this is going to happen? Because we did have somebody in the chat asking about that, and we covered it way early on in this session. So if people weren't here in the beginning, that might be helpful for them to remember.
Huh? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Glad some people can read. Okay. So there's the release schedule. So in a couple of weeks, we'll bring up our first beta customers. So those are the people who are jumping on board very, very first. And Indiana is set to migrate the weekend of May 31st. And it is over the weekends. Because this is, normally when we do an update, it happens in 10-15 minutes, okay? The system gets updated. But because this is a massive overhaul, the whole back end, the whole new search engine, everything's being moved, so it's a much bigger process. So it is, unfortunately, going to take the system down for the weekend.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. Keep sending them if you have them, or if I forgot yours, send it again and remind me. But I think at this point, we're going to transition over into kind of the ILL transit review, just to kind of show us how requests go back and forth in the system. So if any of you guys are new or just want a refresher on that, you can stick around for that. But if you're a rock star on the request process, like I said, nothing about that is changing with this new release. It's just going to visually look a little bit different, like you've been seeing in the system, but the process is going to be exactly the same.
Correct.
We just had a question about whether or not the stats will change.
No, the stats will not change. Here's the statistics menu. My personal favorite, stay too long report, is still here. So no, the stats are not changing. I will say that there will be some changes to stats down the road that we've been working on. things that people have been requesting. But because of this whole version upgrade, we won't see that, right off the bat. But for now, nothing there is changing.
Okay,
Okay.
I think that's it.
Okay. Before we do anything else, actually, I think I might have placed a request earlier. But let's take a look at the request manager, because I just want to show you that the request manager itself hasn't changed. Okay. We still have all the options. You can tell this is a demo site. We have 241 items in awaiting approval, which is an awful lot. In this case, we do have our patrons set up so that they do not have automatic approval, so they all go into awaiting approval. And this is the first thing I should have said when that question came up earlier. This is the easiest way to find out if you're don't have your patrons go into awaiting approval. Don't have them go out automatic approval. That means they get sent out automatically and they would immediately end up in pending status. You can have them all come into awaiting approval, and then you look at them and decide whether or not to move them on. So I just wanted to take a quick look here just to make sure we had some active things happening, which we do. Did you want me to do a request again? I did one before. I can do one again if you want.
We can show one again. I don't think
Okay.
it'll take that long. Just start the process from the beginning.
Okay. So I'm going to go through and search for my favorite book, my favorite word, library. This is a really good one, Library and Unquiet History. Let's request that. So it comes up as a returnable because it's a book. Before, remember, I had added that the addition statement. Whenever I configured my form, I added the volumes needed, which you probably really wouldn't add on a non-returnable, but you could if it's something where things come in multiple volumes. The volumes needed field, let me just mention, this is also helpful. You might want to change the name, but this is a helpful field to use if people do a lot of requests for series. And I know we're talking about people not lending DVDs, but if you do lend DVDs, certain TV series that it's like season 1, season 2, season 1, episodes 4 to 7 type of thing. If you have a volumes needed field, people can fill in the specific one that they want, because those are the kinds of things that are cataloged all over the place, a whole set, separately, whatever. So, okay, let's move on. Put in your patrons. Oh, let me just say, if I did a patron lookup, you have to put in your patron name. And in this case, we're just set up to do a lookup in the system, meaning that our patrons are loaded. If they weren't, if we were doing patron authentication that way, then we would have an ILS lookup button here also to find our particular patron. So lowercase d, here's that email one again. Let me go ahead and click submit. So ILL request. Oh, here's a good one. This item is available in your local library system. Would you like to go to your local catalog? So this system is set up, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of this process, but it's telling us that, whatever library I'm from owns this. Do I want to get it from my local system? I'm a staff person, so I can override that, because if I'm a staff person placing this type of request, I know it's not available. That's why I have to place it outside of my system. So I'm going to go ahead and do a staff override. And so this request has been placed. Oh, no, it's available in my local library. Oh, I had to pick a bad one here. Ooh. I just lost my page
Oh,
here.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that was my fault. I think I clicked off.
I was gonna say I lost my page and I can't get it back. So sorry, everybody. I picked a
Are you guys seeing it? Because now I'm not. Yeah. What did I do?
Oh, you're not seeing it anymore?
Yeah, she's on. Oh, we
Okay.
need to go back and share your screen, Debbie.
Oh,
Let me
share my
grab this
screen
real
again?
quick.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I clicked off on something that I didn't know I shouldn't be clicking off on while we're doing this. So I'm bringing it back.
And this isn't the system I use, so I didn't know what to do either,
There we
or
go.
that it was not even working.
There we
Okay.
go.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, everybody, we're back. We're back. Let me try a different one here anyhow. Okay. So put in my name, my email, and click submit. So my request has been submitted. You can tell we've been doing a lot of testing here. System will check for lenders, check back, and I can always print the request form if I want, but you really don't need to because the system is going to keep track of all the requests that are placed in your request manager. So let's just do a quick look at the request manager again. So remember on the left, this is where you manage your borrower requests. So these are the items that you have placed. And when I say you, I mean your library, your staff, your patrons. These are your things. So the action items are those things that you take action on. If they're a link and there's account, it means there's something there for you to do something with, or it's just notifying you, like something that's already in complete status. You don't have to do anything with this. And complete items that are in complete status will stay on the, do you know offhand what your setting is in the system-wide record for 365? That's what I thought. So things will stay in complete status for a year, so you'll be able to find them on your request manager for that length of time. After that, you will not be able to find them on your request manager. You would have to find them using the statistics and activity reports to do that, or we could always find requests for you if they're older. But this means if there was something in ship status, that would mean that it was shipped from a lender, and once I receive it, I would open up my ship list and mark it received. Things that are awaiting approval. In this case, we have items that our patrons' requests do not automatically go out. They have to be approved by a staff member. So they're all going to be in awaiting approval. Hopefully you would not have this many in awaiting approval. If you do not give your patrons automatic approval, you really need to check this, at least daily, depending on your how much requesting your patrons do. It may even be more often, just so that things don't sit here in awaiting approval before they actually get shipped out. So if I wanted to send one of these on, you can just, if you just have a few on the page, you can look at them and update them all at one time. With that many, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to come into the full record display. And so in this case, you would just take a look at the request, see if this is something that I want to send on or not. If I do, I click approved send, submit. Oh, figures I picked an old one. The need by date has expired. That's what happens whenever you have all of these no. Let's say that we need it by July 2nd of 2019. All right, I just changed the need by date and now I'm going to send it out. So, if something, had expired, you're able to change the need by date if the person's willing to wait longer. And so that I just said approve send, it's being processed. Things are running a little slow here. Normally that just pops up and goes right away again. That's what I mean, you know, this little notice. Whoa. Something just happened there, pretty funky. Okay. It was just like re-rating itself there for a second. So I just moved one out of awaiting approval. What that does is it puts it into the list of things under this items awaiting trading partner response. Anything that's pending means that it's pending in my library, all right? And it's also in pending status at another library. On the right side of the screen is where we manage our lender requests. So anything that's in a status for a borrower is in the same status for a lender out there. So if I look at my pending list, these items are all in pending status at different libraries. And here's my title, the request number, the patron name, and the current status, all pending. The little gear in the upper right, and this is on all of these pages on the request manager. Let me just point this out. This is where you can decide what fields you want to look at on this screen and which ones you don't want to look at. So if you want to, you know, always look at, you know, the format, you can select that. Let me close my gear, and so now the format is going to show up. And that can be helpful if you're the lending library. You might want to show the format on your pending request. Now I wanted to take a quick look at one of these. Let's look at that one. Borrower. Just wanted to see who the lender was. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open, well, I want to, forgot I didn't have this bookmarked. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in again to a different library, if it'll let me. There we go. And I want to look for just had to find a library that I knew was going to have a pending request there. Oh, I thought that went to that library. Okay, I was going to try and show this to you on two different libraries, but I can't because I wrote down the wrong one. But once a request goes out, it goes into pending status at a lender. Items that are in pending status might have a couple of little icons on the far left. If you see the little blue push pin next to a title, that means that there's a borrower's note, either from a staff person or a patron, on that request. So always good practice if you have the little push pin to click on the title. We don't have one in this case, but you'd want to click on the title, open up the record, and look for that borrower's note. And whenever you find the borrower's note, and I'm not sure where they even have it on this particular form, this one's pretty complicated, but you would look at the note and see if it's something that you're able to do or not. It might be like, we need an can we please have an extended due date? If you can, great. If you can't, then you would want to send this request on. So always take a look if there's a push pin and see what the note is. If there's a little red flag, that means that this request is ready to expire or move on to the next lender, because you only have, I believe, 4 days when a request comes into your library and it's in pending status, if you don't act upon it within that time frame, it will move on to the next potential lender. So that little flag is telling you, oh, you better do something with this or you're not going to have it here anymore to deal with. And I can't get rid of this little, you can't see it, but I can't make it move anymore.
Oh, weird.
I know. So I can't see what's on my screen. Well, I'll try and do it. I should be able to. So if you have things in pending, you want to select the correct status to move on. The first one is will supply in process. That basically just means it's going to be held at your library until you do something with it. All right. Shipped means we have this, we're ready to ship it. Will not supply means, sorry, I can't supply it. It's always good practice if you select will not supply to also select a reason or condition. If that column is not showing up on your pending list as a lender, click the little gear icon and select it. All right. And that's because anytime you can't supply something, it's always good practice to say why you can't supply it. All right. Is it currently checked out? That means it's in use or on loan. Is it simply lost? We can't find it at all. Notice that after each status, like in use, on loan, or lost, or not found as cited, on hold, it says either retried or unfilled. That means that if this request goes out to all the potential lenders, let's say there's 5, none of those 5 are able to fill it, that request is then going to go back to the borrower either in unfilled status or retry status. It'll go back as unfilled if all 5 selected reasons that result in unfilled, such as lacking, non-circulating, not owned. The borrowing library is going to know, there's no sense in trying this particular request again because it can't be filled.
Do we have item 2 new yet?
Pardon me?
Item 2 new yet?
Item 2 new is not here. If it's 2 new, use the one called policy problem. And you do have to scroll down to see that one, but that covers a multitude of reasons. Policy problem, sorry, we can't handle it. And that results in unfilled. All right. So you don't have to worry about this request coming back to you right away. Whenever I say right away, hopefully it won't come back right away. But if out of those 5 borrowers, let's say 3 selected reasons that were unfilled as the final result, but the other 2 selected ones that say retry, this one is on hold for somebody else. The other one, it is in use on loan. So they're saying retry because we can't send it to you now, but we might be able to down the road. So retry it. So that request would then go back to the borrower in retry status once it goes through all 5. Sorry, I went back too far there. Once it goes through all 5 of those libraries. When you see something in retry status, do not just come in here and say, I'm going to retry them all. Don't just say approve, send, submit them all and go, because they may have just come back to your library that morning. All right. And if somebody's book was checked out yesterday, guess what? It's probably still checked out today. All right. So you don't want to retry these things right off the bat. You'd want to take a look at them, see what the reason is. The reason is always going to be given in the history information. This one encountered an error and could not check status. They skipped that library. Retry them later. Hey, might have been just a weird, Z target error that day. I might want to retry this one today. So you want to take a look at these and see if you do want to retry them or not. But that's why it's always good on your pending list, if you're saying that you can't supply something, to give a reason as to why you can't supply it. So if something is in pending status and I have it and I'm going to ship it, I would just select the ship status You don't have to give a reason for that one. I'm shipping it. Life is good. And then click submit. Now we only have one thing left in my pending list. And this item, whoops, sorry, I keep going back too far. This item is now under my items awaiting trading partner response in ship status. Okay, so it's shipped. There is an option here called undo shipped. This is something you would have to have permission, as a staff permission to do this. And I like to point this out because number one, it's really nice if you click ship on something and then realize you had the wrong book in your hand. Okay, it's really not the one you were going to ship. But this ability to undo ship is only there until overnight processing happens on the date the item is shipped. All right. If you say you're shipping something and then tomorrow you realize, oh, I can't ship it. Well, guess what? The system believes it's already shipped. You can't undo it anymore. That's a little temporary thing that you can do. So this item is now in ship status, waiting for the borrowing library to receive it. So it goes through the process. It went through the mail. Hey, yay, look at it, something was shipped to me. So I'm the borrower again. I'm working on the left side of my screen. Here's my shipped item. When something comes into my library as shipped, I can mark it as received, lost, or I can't read the bottom, cancel
shipped request.
Cancel shipped request.
Sorry guys, I think we'd have to stop sharing the screen in order to fix that. So.
Yeah, I know, I think so too. So if something's already been shipped to you and you're receiving it, you don't want to cancel the shipped request at this point. So you have to mark it, the best thing is to mark it received because that's what you've done is you've received it. So that means that you've received it. You're now able to lend it out to your patron. Things will go into not received if they've been shipped to you but haven't been received within the days to supply as listed on your participant record. Then they go into not received status. If you haven't marked it received and it's been a really long time and it's now overdue, it'll go into not received and overdue. If you're a lender and you see things on your items awaiting trading partner response section that are not received and overdue, or even not received, but especially not received overdue, that means you shipped it a long time ago and the library never received it. You're going to want to take a look at these things and follow up and see what's going on. Did they really receive it and just not mark it received? All right, you don't want to let some of these things hang too long. So I've just received the item. My patron checked it out. They brought it back, and I'm going to ship it back to the lender. So I'm going to mark it as returned. I can request a renewal on it. It's up to the lending library if they want to accept my renewal request or not. If I had requested a renewal, it will come in as renew pending. All right. And if you're the lender, you always have an option to accept or reject the renewal. All right. So the item was just shipped from the lender to the borrower received it, checked it out to their patron brought it back, they marked it returned, it came back to the lending library in return status. Anytime you have something in return status, you always want to make sure you mark it as check-in. All right, don't just get those things and throw them back on the shelf. Because what will happen is it's going to just sit there in return status and the borrower is never really sure if you got the item back or not. So you always want to mark something as check-in. Lost is an option. Borrowers and lenders have the ability to mark things as lost. Let me go ahead and check this particular one in here. Okay. Mark it as check-in. Just because once you check something in as the lender, that now completes the entire process. That item is now one of these 220 items in complete status. And it'll sit there for a year, 365 days, until things start dropping off our request manager as complete. I wanted to mention the lost thing. That question has come up a couple times recently. When things are in lost status, it's up to the borrower and lender to work out however to handle it. You know, if the borrower loses it, how to, you know, whatever the lender deems, you know, replacement, you know, pay for the item, whatever. When you are the borrower, remember I'm on the left side of the screen here, I'm the borrower. If I have something in lost status, I don't have the ability to, I can't make that change. Sorry guys, the screen's acting wonky on this end. I can't make it open up at all.
Oh, yeah, because it's showing up below that.
Yeah. All I wanted to say is that I can't.
Can you scroll?
No, because there's only two things in lost. But when you're the borrower and something's in lost status, you cannot delete that request. You can't make it go away, all right? Because you're responsible for it. Only the lender, once they're happy with whatever arrangements you make, they're then able to delete the request. That question comes up a lot, so I just wanted to cover it. So that's the sort of basics of the workflow of placing the request, getting it in your pending status as the lender, marking it shipped, receiving it as the borrower, and then returning it, and then checking it in as the lender so it goes into complete status and the entire cycle is taken care of. There's obviously a lot of other statuses here on the request manager. Again, these are the same statuses we've been looking at. They're not going to change. The way they work hasn't changed. If there's anything in particular you'd like to ask about them, or if there's any questions, we have a few minutes left, but I'm free.
Yeah. We had a question about the error that we saw, that the Z39 error. They said if an error like that is listed, does that mean that the library was sent to didn't even have a chance to see that request?
Oh, in the search history, when we looked in the history?
Yeah.
Yeah, that means that, yeah, the library that it was sent to didn't even get it. And that can happen if, Z targets can be touchy. You know how sometimes if you're doing a search of Z targets, they seem to take forever, or one might always seem to take a long time. And, so if that happens, that's why I said that particular one, if it was in retry, I might say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and retry that one and see if it'll work again. If I get the same error back, I would do they contact you or the library?
You can contact me if you're seeing errors like that, and we can try to figure it out. Because I don't think that library necessarily gets notified that they had an error either.
Library will call and say, we haven't gotten any requests.
Right. Yeah. So Jen just said they might say that. So if it might just be a one-off, a timing thing that day. It might work fine the next time, but if you see it a lot, let them know here. Yeah, I always click on things and I get these, hey, there's one.
So Bethany, to summarize, just when you see errors like that, if you're getting that a lot on a request, just let me know. This is Nicole. I'll put my email address in the chat. I did once, but I'll do it again before we leave as well. Just let me know and we'll work to troubleshoot it. We had a question about whether you can skip the will supply status and go directly to shipped, and I think the answer to that is yes. It's kind of your own workflow process, but no, I don't think so. I don't think you can skip to shipped for an NSIP library because you need not from the list view. You have to go into the direct record to choose that because it needs to match up the barcode number. So you can't go straight to shipped from just your pending list.
From your list.
I think that's always going to be grayed out.
Yeah, will supply is a funky one anyhow because it doesn't really do anything. It just Yeah. But there's customers I work with who tell their libraries don't use it. Yeah, just because it doesn't do it. All it does is hold the request at your library. Mm-hmm. There's nothing happening with it. You still have to mark it as shipped or will not supply. Yeah, you're not saving yourself anything really. I think some really big libraries use it if it takes them a long time to actually pick the items off the shelf.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I understood it was
Yeah.
you would use it if you want to trap like a request at your library so it doesn't go somewhere else.
Mhm.
But then shipped is when you actually have that in your
Mhm.
hand and you're saying, I'm going to get
Yeah,
this
if you're
to you.
processing things pretty quickly, just have them in pending, then, move them to ship.
We had a question about whether we can make the blue push pin and the red flag have a little box that tells you what they mean for people who forget. That's an enhancement request there for you.
That's an interesting one, because actually
I don't know if you hover over them if they do it.
they don't, but that's good. I like it. We can't make it happen today or
Right.
even like super soon, but I like that.
And then I think this question was answered by another chat participant, but I'm going to bring it up for the room and maybe we can put it on the screen. Somebody asked if we can make a list of libraries we don't want to send our request to because they know how to make a preferred library list, but they want don't send this to this library list.
Yes, go into your participant record and go down to below we have all kinds of lists in here. Go to the one that's called blocked lenders and put in the codes of the libraries that you wish to block as lenders. And so your request will not go to them. Is what?
Is Anderson
I don't
Public
know what-
Library fixed yet? And no.
I don't know the answer to your question.
They just get an error every time that says they're on holiday, and no, they're not. Maybe we just need to figure out how to take them out of there if they're not going to, if we're not going to be able to get them fixed. So I'll make a note to take a look at that. Let's see.
It always says you're on holiday?
Yes, but that's because I think that's what we did because they can't accept any requests right now. And I don't remember what the technical issue is for that. I think that occurred before I started. So
okay.
Let's see, we had another one. Bonnie, I'm not sure. The question was, does V6 have an option to select only one format, CD audiobook, for example? I think that might be in the facets.
Yeah.
Like if that's all you want to request.
Well, if that's all you want to request, you just request that on that record of that format.
Yeah.
Is that not?
Yeah, I don't know if she's still on there, but if you have clarification, Bonnie, she's typing.
I do have a paperwork question. I use the shipping label, what you guys call shipping label, to attach to my request. We do our own search. We don't have patrons doing them. And so I really need those to arrive with the item because they have the number of the request and everything on them. And there are quite a few libraries that aren't sending those. And I wonder if it's because of that title, shipping label. That's the same title we use for Info Express. I wonder if you guys could change it to packing list or something like that so that lending libraries will insert that form when they send us their materials. They're sending me the one I would put on the book or the whatever item, but I print my own at a really small size. They're sending me giant ones because they think that's maybe the paperwork that gets attached, or they're sending both, which is a waste of paper.
Yeah. Well, we have a question about the shipping labels, and I'm not sure that there's a way to change what they're called in the system. And I don't know, are you using it where you're printing the one out from the system, folding it in half, sticking it in the book?
When I lend,
Okay, yeah, and you're saying you're not getting those back?
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to get them when I've originated.
Right, right.
There are just a few libraries that just never send them. I get a little piece of paper that says this needs to be rerouted.
Yeah, I think those are the evergreen transit slips, yeah.
And so there's no ILL number on it.
Right.
Which is,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's super helpful if we were all using the same.
Yeah, I think that is ideally supposed to be the process where the borrowing library would return that to you. They'd flip it around, return it to you. They shouldn't have to generate their own. I don't think they can as a borrowing
can.
library.
They
Or
can.
they?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so consider this a plea to please return those shipping labels when you return things. And I don't know that that's something that we can fix within SRCS, but it's a communication thing that we can just make sure we remind people to do. And I think by having other libraries ask for it, then you guys know, those of you who aren't doing it, you know how important it is to the libraries who are asking for it. Let's see. Did Bonnie? Okay. Bonnie says in the initial search in version 5, when you select CD audiobook, you get all results. Then you have to fine tune the results. Can we make it happen on the first search initially? The question about the CD.
So we mean from the advanced search? I'm still.
Yeah, it sounds like she wasn't able to filter down to CD audiobook.
I mean, if I do a search, okay, and I just did a simple search, and if I select the facet on the left, so if I just want audiobook CDs, if I select that facet, I'm only going to get results that are audiobook CDs. And then if I want to place a request, it's going to be on that particular format that's on the screen. I'm not sure that I'm answering the question. Yeah, if you do it from advanced search, then you can definitely just select the format that you want, you know, and that's all the results that you'll get.
We have more questions in here, but I'm starting to lose them a little bit. All right. We have one that says, Letitia, that question about whether it sometimes says send to SRCS when you check it back in. If you're an evergreen library, that's what I was talking about before. That's an evergreen SRCS NSIP connection thing that's going on. So email me offline and we'll answer that for you. It says, currently the same title may have multiple records due to cataloging differences, so we wait to see which record has the most amount of owning libraries associated with it before placing the request. How necessary is that now?
It's still a good idea, okay? Only because even though I had said earlier that the system is going to go out and see if it can find other matches for that record. I just lost the screen here again.
I'm putting up the LEU page. That's what happened before. Was I didn't know if I clicked that when I clicked on that to see what was there, that it took away your screen. So I'm putting it up because we did have some questions about that. So you guys can see it.
And so the system will go out and look, but I can't, we can't guarantee that it's going to find other matches. It may be that there's multiple records because they actually are all different. So it tends to be good practice to select a record that does have more holdings attached to it than not. And especially if you're doing a multi-copy, you need to do that. So if you selected, the other thing is if you select a record that only has one holding attached and you say, oh, well, I know there's a lot more in there, it'll go out and find them. Well, that one with the one holding might be a really lousy record and might not have an ISBN or the correct ISBN, so it may never find another match. So
we had a representative from Anderson Public Library chime in here saying they're working on a new NSIP connection, so they'll get that figured out soon, maybe. They're on hold until they figure that out, so that's good to know they're here. Sorry, I lost it again. Yes, Elaine, this session is being recorded and we will send you a link. Clayton had a question about LEU certificates, which is why I switched the screen over there to that so you can see all of that information if you're ready to leave and we're just not giving that to you. But I didn't want to affect Debbie's ability to show you things if more of these questions relate to that.
They're seeing my screen, not yours.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they should be seeing this LEU thing now, I think.
I don't think.
Or not.
Online.
Online.
Are they?
Online,
Okay, good.
Yeah. Though for those of you in the room, we have that on paper. Yeah.
Very much.
Oh.
I think that might be all of the questions that are coming in. If there's any more in here, I'll go through the chat and reach out to you guys individually, because I think that's everything. Like I said, the session will be recorded. I'll send out a link to everybody this afternoon. I'm going to put my email back in the chat. So if you have questions that I didn't get to and you want to bug me about them, feel free to send me an email. But today, anytime, really, I'm your contact for this stuff. So I'll get you guys answers that you need on any of this stuff. Thanks, guys. I think we're going to stop the recording, at least at this